It's been a while since I've done an update on the Flint water crisis, or as I call it, Black Holocaust. But anyway, just to give you an update, the people who are monitoring the water system and distributing filters have discovered that the filters in some cases, I can't say a lot, just some, because that's all I've been made aware of. In some cases, the filters are ineffective. For those of you who didn't know it, lead in the amounts of 5 parts per billion or above are unfit to be consumed per the EPA guidelines. The filters that have been distributed are rated to remove up to 150 parts per billion of lead from the water that comes through them. They have recently discovered that there are homes that have lead up to 4,000 to 5,000 parts per billion entering homes. So they are now telling people that even with the water filters, they need to make sure that they test the water to make sure that the amounts of lead within the water are 150 parts or less. Otherwise, the filters are no good, basically. Now, the person you see there is the EPA administrator. She's the head of the EPA. Her name is Gina McCarthy. Now, there was a rumor that the EPA was going to pull out of Flint shortly, but that was just a rumor and it's untrue. So I'm going to play the video from the Rachel Maddow show, which will dispel that particular rumor.
We are here today because a state-appointed emergency manager made the decision that the city of Flint would stop purchasing treated water that had well served them for 50 years and instead purchase untreated water and not treat that water. That is the decision that was made. And by law, the state of Michigan had to approve that switch, and they did not require corrosion control, all to save money. Now, that state decision resulted in lead leaching out of lead service pipes and plumbing, exposing kids to excess amounts of lead.
That's the head of the EPA, head of the federal EPA in Flint, Michigan today, delivering just a scathing rebuke of the Rick Snyder administration and the state of Michigan's responsibility for lead poisoning all the kids in Flint, Michigan. The head of the EPA said today in Flint that her agency is there for the long haul. Quote, "We are not leaving until the water system in Flint is back on track." In addition to the head of the EPA personally going to Flint today, 2 big things just happened in Flint. The first involves Flint's mayor. When she was elected last year, Mayor Karen Weaver had almost no authority, right? Because the city had been taken over by the state. That's the whole emergency manager thing in Michigan, right? Flint had been under state control for years. So newly elected Mayor Karen Weaver didn't have much power to actually do anything to try to get her city out of this lead poisoning disaster they were well into by that point. She then decided that she would basically fake it till she made it. And she made this bold, arguably outside her lane of authority gambit, and she declared a citywide state of emergency. We don't know if she had the authority to do that, but she just did it. And because she did it, because Mayor Weaver took that leap, ultimately that started a ball rolling in terms of accountability that resulted in Michigan Governor Rick Snyder finally issuing an actual emergency declaration for Flint, and then President Obama signing a federal emergency declaration for Flint. And that is ultimately how you get the head of the EPA in Flint today, promising to fix Flint's water and to be there till it's fixed. It started because Mayor Weaver made that bold move. In terms of government action, that was the thing that changed the course of how the government was responding. Well, today, Mayor Weaver has done something like that again. She convened a press conference this afternoon and said that she is calling for all of Flint's lead water pipes to be removed and replaced. She announced that she's convening a team of people headed by a retired brigadier general who will head up this effort to replace all of Flint's lead pipes. She even proposed a faster, cheaper method for replacing pipes. She says the state's capital city of Lansing used this faster, cheaper method to remove and replace thousands of lead service lines in Lansing, and she thinks they could do that in Flint too. So getting down to the nitty-gritty, what Karen Weaver does not have is the ability to actually order something like this to happen. Flint certainly doesn't have the money to do it. Governor Snyder, we know, is in no hurry to replace any of Flint's pipes. He says he wants a lot more study and testing before any pipes are replaced, if they even need to be replaced at all. But by God, Karen Weaver looks like she's going to get those pipes dug up by sheer force of her will.
This must happen immediately. That's what I'm asking for. I am morally obligated to use every bit of the power and authority my office has to make Flint's water safe and the city successful for the people who live and work here. And that's what I intend to do.
We don't necessarily know what power and authority she has, but she is doing everything she can, including this bold gambit today, laying down that gauntlet. That is one big thing that happened in Flint today. The other thing that happened in Flint today is even bigger. That's next.
Now, Mayor Weaver is the type of government official that every city, state, and even a president should be. She did not take this situation lying down, and she has done everything she can for her constituents. Now, my question is this. According to information I received, the city of Lansing, which is the capital for the state of Michigan, had all of their lead pipes removed, and the cost was not extraordinarily prohibitive. So why now is the governor saying that they got to do all of these studies before they can make a decision about removing the lead pipes? That should be a no-brainer. And based on the cost, and my understanding is the cost is going to be somewhere around $70 to $80 million to replace all these pipes, where the governor and his people were claiming that this was going to be $1 billion job. And my assumption is that, you know, maybe it's 100 million, maybe it's 200 million, but the state of Michigan is sitting on a $1 billion surplus. So they need to pull that money out of that surplus and get all those pipes removed. But there's an additional situation that occurred today, and I'm going to roll the clip on that one just to see how ridiculous Republicans have gotten as far as trying to protect their own. Now, this is part two. Congress, the House of Representatives, has finally gotten around to doing an investigation. But is it really an investigation? This particular clip from the Rachel Maddow show is going to show you how people are covering other people's asses and how they're going to let certain people hang out there to dry.
Once the country started to wake up to the giant man-made lead poisoning disaster in Flint, Michigan, one of the first dramatic things we learned about what would become the response to Flint was that the U.S. attorney was investigating, a federal prosecutor's investigation into how Flint's water got poisoned. We knew that was happening as of the first week in January. We didn't know if it was a criminal or civil investigation. Today we find out it's a criminal investigation. Today we find out the FBI is involved. An FBI spokeswoman in Detroit says, quote, "We've been investigating it for a while." And now everybody's wanting to investigate, including something a little sketchy in terms of an investigative overture, I guess we could call it, from Congress. Tomorrow there's going to be the first congressional hearing on the Flint water crisis, but it is not without controversy. Congress is going to hear from some of the people involved in this story, but they're not going to hear from the main people involved in it. The Republican committee leaders did not, for example, invite Governor Rick Snyder to testify. Today we also learned that EPA whistleblower Miguel Del Toro will not be there. We also learned that former Flint Emergency Manager Darnell Earley is refusing to appear, although there may be some late-breaking news on that tonight. In terms of this hearing tomorrow, here's how the ranking Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, Elijah Cummings, is describing tomorrow's event. Quote, "At Wednesday's hearing, we won't hear from the governor, from any of the emergency managers he appointed in Flint, or from anyone else in the state who was involved in making decisions that led to this crisis." He went on to call the hearing, quote, "a partisan effort to protect the governor and others who brought about this crisis." Joining us now is one man who will be testifying at tomorrow's hearing, Congressman Dan Kildee of Flint, Michigan. Congressman, I know you've been working like you can't believe on this story. Thank you so much for being with us again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel.
I want to start by asking you, I mentioned there might be some breaking news about this congressional hearing tonight. We have seen it reported this hour that the Flint emergency manager, one of the people who was directly involved in this decision that did poison the water in Flint, he's being subpoenaed now to testify tomorrow on Capitol Hill. Do you know anything about that? Do you know what's likely to happen there?
No, I did talk to Chairman Chaffetz on the floor of the House during a vote series today, and he did indicate that he would be subpoenaing Mr. Earley. And I think they were embarrassed. They had invited him, he had accepted, and then maybe began to understand the gravity of what was about to take place, and then withdrew. And I think the committee chair was quite irritated by that, so they did issue a subpoena. Whether or not he'll appear is doubtful, at least based on some reports that I've just seen.
We have been hearing that he and his lawyer are refusing to be served with that subpoena tonight. Obviously, anybody has the right to plead the fifth, for example, in a case like this. But there's questions that have been raised, particularly by Ranking Member Cummings, that the committee isn't really trying to get to the bottom of this, that they're not being aggressive at investigating, that they want to make this an Obama administration scandal instead of really figuring out what happened in Flint. Does this issue with the subpoena tonight change your mind at all about the overall direction of the committee here and what Congress is trying to learn?
Not really, because if they really wanted to get answers, they would ask the governor to come. He's the one person who's in a position to know exactly what happened, to answer the questions. He pledged, as you know, complete transparency. This doesn't look much like transparency. But the committee hearing, I'll testify because I asked to tell Flint's story before the committee hears from other witnesses. But, I think everything communicates. And I think the hearing is important because the Congress and those watching will see exactly how transparent the Snyder administration is being about this. Not at all. And they'll also see that I think members of Congress who really should be discharging their duties protecting children in Flint, some of them may be more interested in the career of Governor Snyder than the career choices that these kids are going to have.
Congressman, we also got word today that the FBI is part of the investigation into why this happened and how this happened in Flint. We'd heard last month that the U.S. Attorney was looking into it. It looks now like it is a broader investigation with the FBI on the case as well. Is that heartening to you? Do you have any expectations there in terms of the federal investigation?
Well, I'm very happy that it's happening, mainly because the individuals who did this to the people that I represent, to people in my hometown, need to be personally held accountable. And I hope and I believe that the facts will lead the investigation wherever it goes, and those people who did wrong to the people of Flint will have to stand for that and explain what they did, and will be judged accordingly. I am concerned, however, that with all the attention on individual accountability, that we will somehow lose the responsibility, the moral obligation that the state of Michigan has to make it right for the people of Flint.
Yep.
As you showed, Mayor Weaver is asking for those lead service lines to be replaced. The state of Michigan should write a check to the city of Flint for $60 million to get that done, and they should do it tomorrow. I know we're working to get federal help, but frankly, the governor's out of excuses. He's sitting on $1 billion, big tax cuts for the wealthiest people in the state of Michigan, and Flint has water that they can't drink, and he's not doing anything about it. That's just wrong.
Congressman Dan Kildee of Flint, Michigan, who's been really aggressive on this issue in every possible way for the folks in his district. Congressman, I know we'll have you back soon on this. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, sir.
Now, in my mind, excuse me, the very first people that should be testifying, other than this congressman telling the Flint story, should be the two emergency managers. Emergency Manager Kurtz, who was the one who came up with the plan in order to switch away from the Detroit water system, with the options of either staying with Detroit until the Huron water system was up and running, or going with a mix of Detroit water and Flint River water, or going completely with Flint water. And that's in the budget that the initial emergency manager Kurtz had approved with the sign off of the mayor and the city council. But at that point, there was no actual decision to go on solely Flint water. It was an option, but no decision had been made as to which of the three options were going to be used. Now, you get the emergency manager Early. He was the one who actually flipped the switch. And when he was interviewed, his excuse was that he didn't feel that he had to second guess the previous emergency manager or look over any of the work that that emergency manager had done. And he gave some flim-flam excuse as to why. So those two guys should be the first two up there. And between the two of them, you would find out who actually made the decision to go onto the Flint River water. Then after that, you should have the scientist and the doctor who actually discovered the problems, and then you should have the environmental quality official who basically turned a blind eye to the situation and basically lied as far as the amounts of lead that were in the water. From that point, you should go to the whistleblower from the EPA who basically told his regional manager about the problem, and the regional manager told him to keep his mouth shut, and then you should grab her and get her ass up there as well. And then finally, you should get the governor in front of Congress and have him explain everything that went on. So we're going to see what kind of butt covering Congress is going to try to perform for Governor Snyder. But with the FBI being involved in this thing, the EPA is already involved in this thing, and the Department of Justice being involved in this thing, somebody's ass is going to jail. My money is going to be on the black guy, Early, because he was the one who actually threw the switch. And then the other people who should go to jail should be the people from the Environmental Quality Office who basically lied as far as the amount of lead that was being distributed through the water. And I don't know if the governor should go to jail, but he should be made to pay the price because he knew about this, and he knew about it for, in my opinion, at least a year.